We're going on year 15, so I've seen the guys that have been successful and the guys that have not. The people that I see that have been very successful, they've just been consistent on servicing their customers, and then just looking at other opportunities out there to maximize the revenue. Agriculture, we're hauling feed and food for humans and animals, so we're not recession proof, but we're always in a pretty good spot to be, as long as people are eating and people are eating animals, meat, we have a job.
All right, y'all, quick word from our sponsor. Discover the hassle-free trailer leasing experience with Paramount Trailer Leasing, a family-owned business based out of the greater Fort Worth area. With more than 30 years of industry experience, they offer a range of high-quality trailers from flatbeds to dry vans and specialized models designed to meet all of your transportation needs. Enjoy flexible lease terms, competitive rates, and a same-day simple leasing process that requires no credit checks and guarantees trailers with no recap tires. Just fill out an online application, have your lease agreement prepared, receive a call to arrange pickup, sign the agreement, hook up, and get on the road all in one day. Visit ParamountTrailerLeasing.com today, and also you get free breaks for the lifetime of your lease just by mentioning Truck and Hustle. All right, y'all, let's go. All right, Hustle fam, we are back with another amazing episode, and today I have a very special guest. Today we're going to the farm, y'all. We're going to the farm. I have all the way from Missouri, Mr. Jared Flinn. Welcome to the show, sir.
Yeah, Rahmel, thank you.
So, agriculture, we're going to talk about that today. I am very, very interested in learning a ton about this industry because I know nothing about it. So I may ask you some what appears to be like really dumb questions, like really remedial, but just bear with me because I'm learning today.
Sure.
So I want you to talk to me like I'm a sixth grader today as we learn and explore. And anybody who's familiar with this industry, bear with me as well because I may sound crazy. But that's the whole goal, to learn. Yep. Man, listen, thank you for coming all the way up to join us on Truck and Hustle, man.
Yeah, man, thank you for allowing me to come here. You were on my show, I think, 2 years ago, and it was an honor, and love doing this.
Yeah, for sure. So you serve the agriculture industry in multiple ways.
Yep.
You've been in the industry for almost 20 years now?
20 years, yeah.
Okay.
Is when I started.
When you started. And, man, you've built BulkLoads, which is like a load board for the agriculture industry.
Yep.
You have a factoring company.
Yep.
You have an insurance company,
Yep.
compliance company.
Yep.
But most importantly, man, you serve a really interesting, cool, unique group of people. And these are people who are farmers, people in the ag space, right? So I want to learn about that world today and just talk about the businesses that you've built and learn more about the industry. So I want to start with your background, man. Well, you're from Missouri.
Yep.
Tell us about coming up in Missouri, man. How was it?
Yeah, born and raised on a farm in eastern Missouri. I grew up about 60 miles west of St. Louis, but rural area. But we had a 240-acre farm. When I came to age, actually the farming, and people that know farming will kind of remember this, but late 70s, interest rates went up. A lot of people were losing farms. My grandpa was one of them. And my earliest memories, we still kept the original farmstead, but some of the other farms that we had been foreclosed on. And but I really grew up. We had the farm, but I really grew up in the sawmill industry. So my dad and uncle started a sawmill business, and from the time my brothers and I could really reach above I've told this story numerous times, but my dad built these stools that we would stand on to run at the sawmill, so we could be high enough to run the boards and cants and nail pallets together. But yeah, the sawmill that we had, we built pallets, and then the cores we sold railroad ties, and that's really kind of where most of my youthhood was spent, in that sawmill.
Okay, so that was your dad and your dad's dad running that business?
It was my dad and my uncle.
Your dad and
who
your
started
uncle.
the sawmill business, yeah, because the farming had dissipated by then, and my uncle, I think it was his idea, he wanted to get into the sawmill business, so he got my dad involved, and they built a sawmill right on the farm. So I mean, it was not even not less than 100 yards from our house.
Okay.
And I can always remember the story, and we're thinking like this old, picture old 1950s sawmill, like the big blades turning. But I can remember especially in the summer months, my dad would start that thing up. It was run by this big Detroit motor, but he would start it up at like 7 in the morning, and you had 5 minutes to get out of the house and man your station at that mill, or he'd be looking for you.
Got it. So by the time you got involved, how old were you, like as a kid?
I think I was 8 or 9. I guess my parents can't get in trouble today since I was over 40.
Child labor laws.
Yeah, child labor laws. But they. My brothers, I have 3 brothers, but that's what we did in summer months. But even after school, we worked in that sawmill.
So at that age, did you see it as a business, or did you more so look at it as just like what my dad does and I'm just helping him out? Like, how did you understand the economics of what you were doing at that age?
Yeah, I look back now, and this is something I'll say real quickly. I try to now think about my children in this aspect. But growing up on that farm, especially that mill, like I had to show up for work. If I didn't show up, that spot at the mill, which had to be filled, got voided. So like I didn't have a choice not to show up. And I can still remember there was one instance, I think my brothers and I, we were going to boycott one day. We didn't want to work out the mill. And I can remember my dad looking out there. He started that mill and was still he would run one piece of the mill, like run the big log through, then he'd have to get off. He'd run the spot where one of my brothers was supposed to be, then he'd have to run the other spot. And we felt so guilty. But there was a sense of that if we didn't work, the job wouldn't get done. So it was like this obligation. I try to think of my kids, like kids today, I'm not saying all, but like they don't have this sense of purpose in life.
Right.
Like your purpose is to help and serve the family. And that's what I got to do at an early age. And yeah, I could go and then did not want to do that. Had like just so many times, like it was like, there's got to be, all my friends were having fun and doing other things. Yeah, we're working out at the sawmill. But no, I look back and it was just a life lesson that I'm so thankful that my dad had us a part of.
What type of life did that afford you guys, having that sawmill?
Not a good one. So we grew up super humble beginnings farm. My dad, I will say this, my dad and uncle loved my dad to pieces. My uncle, he passed away. They had a passion for it, but a business side they didn't. And the sawmill growing up, we were just foot to mouth every, there's a hand to mouth week to week. So yeah. I remember my mom asking my dad many times at the end of the week, we need money for food. And sometimes my dad was able to give money and sometimes didn't. So there were just some things that they probably didn't hone in on their costs, what things cost and their expenses and revenues that they probably should have done. Looking back now. So it didn't afford us a good life, but I also look at that as I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have those humble beginnings. So
got it. So how long did your dad do the sawmill business for?
Yeah, he really did the business until my brothers and I graduated high school and got out of the house.
Okay.
So
he didn't have the child labor anymore. He went ahead and said, let's go ahead and shut it down.
Yeah, he had hired some other employees, but you don't realize like sawmill work, if anybody's ever done it, it is back-breaking, brutal type work. There's not a lot of people that are willing to do that in that time, for $8-9 an hour. So it was just, he did it. My brothers and I graduated, and it was a short time after that he had let it go. I talk about how brutal it was. It was so brutal. I mean, I'd had 3 of my fingers cut off in the mill.
Hold on.
Yeah.
3 of your fingers?
Yeah. These 3 fingers, this one, all the way down my thumb. I mean,
these were cut off?
Yeah. They were hanging by a piece of skin on the edge, and you can kind of see how much shorter they are. But I just use it in context. I'm not exaggerating. But yeah, that was the sawmill life that I had to live, and just you got to be careful on the farm. And
do they have insurance or something for that?
Had no insurance, no work comp, nothing like that. Yeah, I remember when this happened. Actually, my older brother grabbed me. I had my shirt off because that mill was always 100+ degrees inside there. But taking my shirt, putting it on my hand, my brother throwing me in the truck, running me to the community hospital, where then I had to get life-flighted in a helicopter down to St. Louis University, where they did the reconstructive surgery. And got him attached. But,
and this wasn't like a normal life for your peers weren't really living this life like you said, right? Like they were like the the sawmill life and work and all that? Like your friends weren't doing nothing.
Well,
like
I wouldn't say that. I would say I have good friends. We all grew up farming communities, so
Okay.
there was other things. I had good friends that they grew up on hog farms,
Okay.
and dairy farms, and beef farms, row crops. So no, it was all.
So
I mean,
it's
a lot
normal
of
to
it,
get a finger removed every now and
yeah,
again. In
yeah.
your circle.
Actually, I had classmates that were involved. I can remember one specifically. He had a pinky cut off in a wood splitter, and
Wow.
yeah, it's just it's agriculture.
Okay. Ag life, baby.
Ag life, yeah.
All right. So tell me about it. So you said your dad sold the sawmill,
Yep.
or when you graduated high school?
Yep.
You graduated high school. Did you go to college?
Yeah, so my brothers and I, once we kind of got out, my dad sold the business, and he actually went to go work for a local trucking company in town, and which had a farm, and so he did that. But yeah, I was really big in FFA, and if you don't know what FFA is, it used to stand for Future Farmers of America, but it's an organization most rural high schools have that you can get involved with. Was super involved, my brothers and I, and because of that, I had a teacher that really encouraged me to go get a college degree, and I went to the University of Missouri, studied agriculture, and that's where actually I've said this story before, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
but I knew I didn't want to do agriculture. But all I knew was agriculture. So
Right.
went to the University of Missouri.
Quite a conundrum.
Studied agriculture, and it was funny. I was in a fraternity, and it was in this fraternity house. It was an ag fraternity, so there's other farmers and stuff like that in this fraternity. And I can remember some buddies, some pledge brothers. I asked them one time. I was like, "Well, what do your parents do?" And they're like, "We farm." I'm like, "Well, what else do they do to make money?" Like, they farm. I was like, well, how are you guys making money farming? But it kind of sparked something in me to say that there was actually more. Farming can be a way of living, and a fruitful way of living, a way to make money if you know how to do it right. And so it sparked this seed. So graduated from college, went to work for a company in Kansas City that did grain trading, and that's where I really kind of the essence of BulkLoads started from there. But that's where I went to go work for this company, a large grain trading company called Bartlett Grain.
Okay.
And they put me in charge of the truck division or transportation division. And that's where I really saw the opportunity with trucking and agriculture.
Okay, I am familiar with the FAA by
FFA.
FFA,
Yeah.
Because it's like for kids, right? Like high school kids,
Yep.
and like I think like everybody in the farming community is like a part of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I didn't know
Yeah.
it's more of a rural
Yeah.
organization than urban. But,
Okay, okay, got it. All right, cool. So you work for this company. What is it called?
So Bartlett Grain was the first kind of. Well, actually, after I graduated, I did work for a company driving a truck, and I had my Class A CDL through college. During my college summer years, there was a construction company back home where they did cell phone tower erections and installed equipment, and through that, I got my CDL. So I had my Class A CDL, and right after college, that was 9/11, and job market was crap. So started trying to find tried to find a job, and I was looking in the newspaper at that time, and there was an ad for delivery drivers. So I actually, for 2 years, drove a sheetrock truck delivering drywall materials.
Okay.
And so I just want to back up. So I always tell people, I had
a little bit of trucking experience there.
Yeah, I had my Class A CDL, and it wasn't over the road. It was within an 8-mile radius of our home base. But yeah, so then to fast forward, did that for a couple of years, then moved to Kansas City, worked for a large grain trading company. Bartlett Grain is the name of the company. So if you look at the grain industry in the United States, there's really, they call it the ABCs. So ADM, Bunge, Cargill, and you go to Louis Dreyfus, but you go through the list. But there's really a handful of large grain trading companies that make up the big sector. Bartlett, they're top 10. I don't know where they would fall today, but they are privately owned, and I went to go work for them. But that's where I really saw the opportunity and I guess too, I also was looking at I didn't really understand trucking. And when I started working for Bartlett, I was realizing that, man, a lot of the truckers I'm dealing with, they're small owner operators. When I always pictured trucking in the beginning, I was thinking of the Swifts, the Snyders, the Warners, that's, the big mega fleets. But when I was at Bartlett, I didn't deal with any of those trucks. And again, we were in agriculture, so I want to be dealing with dry vans and reefers and stuff. But I started realizing that most of the truckers that I dealt with were these small owner operators. And that's, again, where another reason where I am today. I started seeing that, man, these guys, these owner operators, they're the driver, the mechanic, the dispatcher. You can go through the whole list. They do everything in that business, involved in all of it. So that's where it planted a seed of like, hey, there may be more opportunities to just serve them more just on finding loads.
Yeah. What was your actual role at Bartlett Grain?
Yeah, so I was truck logistics manager, I think was my title. But Bartlett, they would buy grain all over the Midwest, primarily in I would say, Kansas, Oklahoma, those areas. And my job was to get it moved from that origin to that destination. So I would, at that time, early days, I would call these trucking companies up and say, hey, we got wheat out in Sublette, Kansas. It needs to get moved to Kansas City. The rate is 55 cents a bushel. Are you interested? Yes, no, yeah. And if they were, we had this little clipboard at that time that we would write their name on there, how many loads they're taking, and do that. But what I saw, though, when I started working there was like, hey, the grain company makes money moving or buying grain. The more grain that you buy, the more money that it makes. How do you get more grain moved? Well, you got to find more trucks, you got to find more grain, match all that up. So it was kind of interesting. When I first started there, I had a lot of these grain traders. They were contacting me saying, hey, can we get this moved? Well, within, probably 6 months of working there, I was pushing the traders, the commodity managers, saying, hey, I got trucks, can you find more grain to move? So it was kind of a little reverse role. But because I realized, like, hey, we can move more grain if we got the trucks, let's find more trucks and get that moved. So that was my main role. I can, at one time, I can't remember now, but we were moving, some weeks we're moving 1,500 to 2,000 truckloads that we were in charge of coordinating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Big volumes.
So Bartlett is they're like an intermediary between like the grain, the people who bring the grain in, and then the end user. Yeah.
So they'd be a grain trader. So they're buying it from the farmer or another co-op out there in the country, and then they're selling it to a feed or flour mill. So they would buy it from that farmer. Let's just say wheat, for example. That farmer in central Kansas, they would buy that wheat off the farm. We would move it into a terminal. And then from that terminal, then we would send it to a flour mill that would get made into crackers or bread or pasta or anything like that.
Okay. And explain to me like how grain moves. Like how's the life cycle of grain?
Yeah. So grain, and it depends on the type of grain, but I'll just kind of tell you what I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
The main commodities: corn, soybeans, wheat. A lot of that grain, again, it's planted in the spring months, grows in the summer months, harvests in the fall months. So a lot of times your fall months are your big push. That's when truck freight's hard to find. Trucks are moving and getting it moved from the farm into the grain bins. And then throughout that year in the off season, then it's moved from those grain bins to the end users. So it's getting moved to, again, when you're doing all these commodities, but it can get moved to an ethanol plant where it's getting made into ethanol, and the byproducts are getting made into some kind of feed. Pet food is huge in the Midwest. So a lot of that grain gets moved to pet food manufacturing plants and stuff like that. So a lot of times it depends on the grain. Wheat has a long shelf life, but corn and soybeans, a lot of that has to get moved or consumed within that next growing season. Otherwise, it starts to deteriorate. So is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking. And is there like a specific type of grain that you would move like more of? Like was there anything that was more popular, or how was that? How does that work?
Yeah, so in the U.S., more corn is grown than any other commodity, and there's a couple of reasons why. Corn, number one, it can be widely consumed by both humans and animal consumption. It's probably the most consumed by beef, pork, poultry, and then again, you just think about human consumption. But then all the other benefits to it. It can be used for ethanol, alcohol, a lot of the byproducts. Heck, it can be used in different plastics and resins. So that one probably gets grown and moved more throughout the United States than the others. When you think about trucking logistics, I probably was more involved in the company I was working for. We were more in an area that was more wheat focused. So when I first started, it was moving a lot of wheat and those wheat products from point A to point B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you. All right. So how long do you work with Bartlett?
I was with Bartlett from 2005 until 2011. So it was right
About
around
6 years?
Yeah, it was almost right at 6 years.
All right.
Yep.
And what happened after that?
Yeah. So so I knew I had a great experience there, man, and great mentors, managers that I worked with. When within 6 months, I worked my way up the corporate ladder, I would say. I mean, I was working, I was right there at meetings and events with the president and vice president, and it was the best life. I mean, I was making great money. I mean, they were incentivizing me great. Nothing to complain, but I still had this just itch, and I kept trying to think, what else? What else could I be doing? What other value can I be bringing? And there was kind of two things that unfolded to really kind of plant the seed of BulkLoads. But number one, a lot of people don't realize in 2008, which seems so long ago, this little device came out called the iPhone and Android, the smartphone. But after this came out and just the digitization of freight started happening, we started realizing that, hey, there's going to be a lot more automation. And I just started thinking in my head, like, hey, how can you take numerous phone calls, calling truckers all the time, and put it more into a digital process or an app. So that was one thing that was happening, trying to figure out, hey, how do we digitize that? Through Bartlett, I helped create an internal system, probably my very first crack at a TMS or a dispatching platform, but we had it set up where we could, and I worked with this team of developers at Bartlett where we created this system, but with a quick text, with a quick push, we could send text messages to drivers. And this was before people were really texting that much, but we could send them alerts on loads that were available. So that was one thing that really kind of pioneered or really kind of the process of BulkLoads. But the other thing that a lot of people don't realize was probably more on a personal side. Met my wife. We got married in 2006, but it was in 2008 or 9, my father-in-law, which I'll talk more about him, but just crazy, probably biggest mentor of mine, especially on the business side. He was a very successful businessman. He actually worked for Walmart. He was one of the co-founders of Sam's Club. So he was at Walmart in the late 70s. He was senior vice president of merchandising. So he was under probably one of the greatest merchandisers and businessmen of all time. Oh, wow. So the guy just gained all this wealth and knowledge. But anyways, married my wife, his daughter, and it was 2 or 3 years after that. And he was always asking me how business is doing, what are you doing, how you growing, this and that. But I can remember specifically, we were down at his lake house. It was one Sunday day, I think it was a Sunday morning. And he was for some reason, he always loved washing cars. He always loved to wash our car before we went back. I was still living in Kansas City. He was down in Branson, 4 hours away. But we're washing cars, and he asked me, he goes, Jared, he goes, what do you plan to do, like, career-wise? I mean, what's your intentions? And I'm like, well, his name was Rob. I was like, well, Rob, I'm working at this company, Bartlett Grain. I love what I'm doing. And he's like, okay. And he's like, well, I'm just going to give you some key business advice. And I was like, all right, I'm listening. He goes, I've learned in life there's 2 ways to have financial success. He said, number 1, work for a company that's going to give you equity or stock in the company, which that's what he did with Walmart. When he went through, they were awarded stock options and stuff like that. He said, or build a company and create your own equity. So I was like, okay, I appreciate the business advice. Well, drove home, and that whole week I'm thinking about that. I'm like, well, this company I'm working for, they don't give stock. It's a privately owned company, right? And they don't give equity. There's no way to buy into the company or get that. So, like, what am I going to do? So that was again, you got this digital revolution coming, and then this pressure from my father-in-law, who I respected a lot. So that's really what planted BulkLoads. I can specifically remember somewhere in between that, my wife and I were flying. We did like a little quick getaway. We just had our daughter. It was 2009, and we were going to get away just for a weekend. We had, I think, my mother-in-law or her mother-in-law watching her, and we were on a trip to Mexico. But we're up in a plane, and I just told my wife, I was like, I got this idea, but I'm not sure about it. But like, here's what I'd love to do. And I can just remember her listening to me, and she's like, man, I think if that's what's planned in your heart and, you want to go for it, I'll support you. Yeah. So it was a year or 2 after that, it's when I left Bartlett and really started BulkLoads, or helped co-found BulkLoads. I should say, so BulkLoads, the way it started, there was actually my business partner, or co-founder, Matt Ferdine, actually, he was the one that really kind of started it in its prototype or beta phase, and then we partnered up together, and then I was the one that kind of helped bring industry knowledge, experience, and stuff like that in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. So when you got, what's the market size of like the farming community, like in terms of like revenue? Like,
oh man, I wish I had that number. It's huge. I think of Oh man, I'd be just spitballing numbers, but I mean, you're billions and billions of
Do
dollars.
you know how many
yeah.
farmers there are in the U.S.?
It's getting smaller, but I mean, the agricultural land and farming ground, I mean, continues to be massive in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just for context, right? All right. So you have this idea. What's the MVP for BulkLoads? Like, what's the first like business model that you kind of create and think of, and who are you trying to serve?
Yeah, so for BulkLoads, first we wanted to really create a marketplace where we could bring these trucking companies that I had worked with and then other shipping companies like I was part of together, and then also the freight brokers in the middle, but to really create a load board specifically for bulk. There was another one out there, and then some others that had tried to get in the space, but again, it was just one of those that was very, very niche-y. Obviously, there's the general space out there, the DATs and truck stops and 123s and all that. But we said, hey, let's really focus on this niche of bulk. You know, I'm familiar with ag. I know the carriers. I built relationships with them. But that was really the very first crack at it to really figure out and build this marketplace.
Okay. And when you do that, you create the tech.
Yep.
Right? That's first. But how do you bring customers? How do you bring users on? I'm sure that was the tough part.
That's the tough and the magic part about it. And again, I would say this, it was one of those, so it was in 2011, I left Bartlett and we started building technology, and we had kind of a prototype out there. We weren't really implementing a subscription basis yet, but
Okay.
I was trying to get people on there. But I'll say this, I think my years at Bartlett really helped because a lot of these truckers that I worked with there, I had great relationships with. And I always tell people, don't ever burn a bridge, man. Always keep, on the up and up with customers. I just see it all the time. People, they get mad and then they burn a bridge, and you may need that person. But I had a lot of really good relationships with these truckers. So after I'd left, I started calling them up and said, hey, remember me? I was over here at Bartlett. We got this new platform out. Would love for you to check it out. And again, you get a lot of the same responses. I'm not interested, or I already use this, or whatever. I don't care. But there was those people out there that said, hey, I'll give it a shot. Man, you always treated me well at Bartlett, and I respect you, and we'll see if this works. So that was one way. I tell you this, and this is, you see me all the time too. Back then, so that was on the trucking side.
Yeah.
But I said, like, how am I going to get, the gold on there? Which I say gold is the loads. You get the loads, you get the truckers on there. You got to have the loads on there and the content. I started using LinkedIn really early, like again, 2011, again, before really a lot of people started really engaging on LinkedIn. But I knew for a fact that I said, if I wanted to find these shipping companies that had grain or loads to move, that was going to be the best resource. So I got on LinkedIn. I started searching for, logistics manager for this grain company or this grain elevator or this fertilizer company or this rock company, and just started reaching out to those guys. So, it was kind of a virtual knock, but I would send them messages through LinkedIn saying, hey, this is Jared. I got this platform. Would you use it? So you talk about the load board marketplace, it's kind of a chicken and the egg. So you'd have these guys, and again, it was always about timing. So I had to figure out when, where's the market right now? So if right now it's really busy, say that, as we're recording, this is springtime. So it is starting to get really busy. Landscapes moving, there's rock and materials, mulch and all that. So I'm going to start hitting the mulch guys. I'm going to hit the mulch shipping guys, not the truckers. The truckers have got loads already. But who are the landscape guys that I can start calling right now that they need trucks? So that's just how it works. So I always found out that whatever season was in, those are the companies I'm going to start hitting that have those problems. And again, once you got them on the platform, then it slowed down, but then you got the truckers, so it kind of started stacking back up. So
Yeah. Okay. So on the trucking side, who was your typical avatar? What did these businesses look like? Were they like one truck operations? Tell me a little bit about what they look like.
Yeah. So again, like I said, this is trucking in general. Most of our customers, and even today, are 5 or less trucks. Because again, you get into the bigger fleets, and we do have larger fleets. We have some companies that are 200 plus trucking units that use our service. But the guys that really need our service, it's going to be that 5 to 10 truck range. It's the guy that they're not out there avidly searching, a lot of these, they have relationships, but they're just trying to fill in the gaps. So it's usually that small 1, 2, 5 truck operator that, hey, they're running for this company, but they're running these offshoot loads that they need reloads coming back, or they just get into a dry patch or getting a slow season where they need to find freight to fill in the gaps.
So is that typically where they find work? They're running for a dedicated company, or how are they finding opportunities before they find a BulkLoads to find like a load board full of them?
Yeah, most companies, and I would say this, most truckers that I've met over the years, they get into trucking because somebody tells them they need a truck. Hey, I need a, and just say our example. So say you got a guy, let's use an example. We're up here in the Northeast, but say he gets a call, his buddy's hauling for Purdue Ag. They're huge up here, and hey, they need more trucks. Well, you need to get a truck. Well, he starts doing the research and gets hold of the bank, gets the truck, gets his authority and all that. Well, he starts hauling for Purdue. Well, then he starts learning Purdue's only got this amount of freight. If I'm going to keep my truck busy, or hey, Purdue's moving these loads down south somewhere, I got to find reloads out. Then they find a company like ours, BulkLoads, to fill in the gaps. There are companies too. They come to us today fresh, just trying to find loads, and I would say that's probably 50% of it.
Okay.
But I think most guys too, you're not going to go just blind turkey into freight without having some kind of initial contact or loads that you're going to be moving.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, typically, how would they are they reaching out direct? How were they finding loads before using the load board? What was the process to find loads?
I think word of mouth.
Just
Because a lot of these guys,
relationships.
they're, they know a buddy that's running for somebody, or they're a company driver that's hauling for somebody, and they know that there's opportunity to do that. So I think that's how they would find it originally. But I think as the trucking company evolves, and trucking is never consistent. Things change, things drop. You got to have backup plans, and I think that's where they find us then.
Got it. And then when we say BulkLoads, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but talk about some of the different commodities that that you guys have on the platform.
Yeah. So when we're talking about bulk, it's going to be all dry and liquid bulk materials, and usually raw materials. So it's easier to say what type of trailers do we commonly use on our website. So since we're in agriculture, a big one's going to be hopper bottom trailers, and those are the ones, it's got the 2 hoppers on the bottom, it's a tarp on top, grain gets dumps in the top and then flows out the bottom. In-dump trailers, and again, there can be multiple types of in-dump trailers out there, but any in-dump trailers that are hauling aggregates, rock, coal, fly ash, even on the recycling side, so they can be hauling scrap metals, and kind of coils, any kind of byproducts of aluminums, alloys, anything of that sort. Walking floors, those are going to be hauling mulch and bulky type materials. Live bottoms, those are going to be hauling, they can be doing any kind of aggregates, wet feeds, stuff like that. Pneumatic tankers, those are the ones that are going to be, it's a compressurized tank. Those are going to be hauling really fine powdery stuff. So that's on the dry bulk side. Liquid side, as said, any kind of type of liquid. So for us, it's going to be probably more, we can do fertilizers, gasolines, fuels, some food grade stuff. When you get into more specialized trailers, though, that's where it gets harder and harder to really have a marketplace or a load board. Now, again, we'll get pockets where somebody is trying to find a food grade tanker, but typically if someone's going to be running something super specialized, especially like a tanker, a liquid tanker, those tankers themselves can be in excess of $200,000. They're going to have set dedicated round trip freight where they're not really out there searching a marketplace.
Yeah. What would you say is the barrier to entry to get into the bulk, into bulk freight?
That's a great question. Barriers of entry to get into bulk freight. I don't think that there would be a lot compared to other types of freight. I think it's just knowing your customers and where you want to run. And in our side, especially, we're going to be Midwest. So I'll put it this way: if you look at our map of where our density is, Midwest is our biggest pocket, from Minnesota to Texas, Colorado, over to Indiana, Ohio, and then Southeast United States, then Northeast, then West Coast, and then Canada. So that's kind of our pockets. So I think it has a lot more to do with where you're located. If you're listening to this and you're in, Oklahoma, there's going to be, mega amounts of bulk
opportunity.
freight. But if you're listening to this and you're maybe in
New York City.
New York City, maybe a little limited, but I mean, depending on where it is. I was actually looking. So for some odd reason, I'm not saying there's no bulk up there. Like in Maine, we have like 2 users.
Okay.
I don't know why we don't have more, but yeah, in Maine, like it's just one of those spots where we don't have a lot of bulk freight moving. But if you look at Iowa, it's Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska. I mean, huge amounts. So, why I would say the Rocky Mountains area probably not as much either. Arizona, New Mexico probably not as much either.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on
position yourself. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's going to be where you're located.
Okay. Got it. And in terms of like, let's talk like the finances a little bit. Like, how are like the margins in like the bulk freight world? Are guys making good money, or is it tight? Just give me like a general idea.
Yeah, so this is what I think people may or may not like. So bulk freight, you don't have your big volatile swings like you do in general freight. So I'm copying this from somebody else, but like if you look at general freight, you see these big waves like this. Our industry, you see these tiny little. So you get just as smaller. So yeah, we get some downs and we get some ups, but it's not going to be like the general freight where you get this mass running of people getting into it. X amount. I mean, everything's moving to this big crash where everybody's getting out, but you don't see the big falls. But yeah, I think margin wise, you're not going to have your big swings in margin, but you're not going to have your big drop offs in margin either. So.
Got it. Is there any specialized freight that has like larger margins that is like the gold? Like people, like if you haul this particular commodity or you have this particular equipment type, there's a lot of revenue opportunity there.
Yeah, there are, and I'm going to just name a few of them that come to the top of my head. But so one example is right now as we're recording this and in through the spring years, anhydrous ammonia. It's a fertilizer that goes on farm fields. Well, to transport that, you got to have, they call them bottle tankers. So if you see those trucks or those trailers going down the road, it's looks like a bottle. It's not. So it's a tanker, but it's a.
It looks like a long.
Yeah, it's like a big LP cylinder. Yeah, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But those when they run, when anhydrous is moving, I mean, there's not a truck to be found, and those guys are making, bank. And again, because you got to have that trailer, plus it's hazmat, plus they're running. Very seasonal, so those guys, I can't even put a price to it. But I mean, a lot of those guys, they'll run enough just in that quick window of anhydrous that they can coast for the rest of the year.
How much does a trailer like that cost?
I don't even know, but I would say $250,000, if not more. It's got to be crazy. But if you notice those guys that run those, they have the most prettiest trucks. They're decked out. Show type rigs. The trailers even. But there's a reason why. There's some extreme margin that gets made by those guys when they haul. But I think too, you got to be. It's very specialized. You got to have good relationships. Those guys, you can't just go buy that truck and trailer and then go knock on the door of some company that's hauling and be like, I want to haul for you. The guys that I know doing it, they've had relationships for 20, 30 years that have been doing it.
Yeah. What about on the insurance side? Is it to insure those things? I'm sure it's
crazy. Yeah. Because again, they're driving down the road with
and it's hazmat. Like
they're pulling a bomb down the highway, give or take. If that thing, these guys got to be super, super, super cautious. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one, really important thing you said is like the consistency side.
Yep.
So, like you said, freight is very volatile, but in what you do, it's just very consistent. So you don't see as many companies like going out of business. Like what have you seen? Obviously the market, you've seen tons of closures, companies going out of business. What have you seen in your industry in bulk? Are people surviving, or is it kind of mirroring what's going on in the industry, the rest of the industry?
I wish I had the exact statistics, but we don't have near. Now you'll still hear of a guy here and there going out of business, but not to near the extent that we're seeing it on the general freight side. So I think a lot of these guys, they've had to buckle up a little bit, tighten up their boots. But a lot of these guys are faring the storms. We just don't see it on our end. Again, I think I always say this: agriculture. We're hauling feed and food for humans and animals, so we're not recession proof. But we're always in a pretty good spot to be, I mean, as long as people are eating and people are eating animals, meat, we have a job. I mean, it's got to do where we see maybe some, some cyclical things. Like if you have natural disasters, which knock on wood, we haven't had a really, really bad one. When I say like a drought in the Midwest, and even a lot of technology now, even with droughts, we can still produce pretty good crops. Those would be the things that we would see probably some more volatility than the actual just freight rates and tonnage.
So if I'm new to the BulkLoads load board, what is the best way for me to navigate it and kind of find opportunities? What would you like? What suggestions would you give to people out there?
Yeah, I tell people that we're going on year 15, so I've seen the guys that have been successful and the guys that have not, and I think number one, you have to be on the board, and you have to be, and we talked about this before our podcast, dude, you have to be visible to people, and you have to be transparent and open out there. I think the people that I see that have been very successful, they've just been consistent on servicing their customers, and then just looking at other opportunities out there to maximize the revenue.
Got it.
Yeah.
So just like marketing for the most part.
Yeah, I think marketing,
sure,
and again, I think, and I've probably gotten some flack over this over the years, but I say this, that I know a lot of bulk haulers that are doing other things besides bulk that are making a great living. One guy that comes to the top of my head, they still do a lot of bulk, and there's bulk in their name, but this company now, they have a mechanic shop. That's another business. They have a trailer washout where they're now washing trailers and trucks and stuff like that. Other companies, they have leasing programs and stuff. So they're building these other entities to kind of hedge their bets or to kind of create a portfolio. Because again, the guys that I see that are going out, dude, all their eggs are in one basket, and they're doing one thing for one customer. And if that customer goes out, guess what they're doing? They're going out too, or that little one. So they're not kind of thinking. I have this coin, thinking outside the bulk, think outside the box, think outside the. You got to think outside the bulk, man. You got to think out others. And again, I think bulk is a great. I mean, there's tons of opportunity, but you got to keep thinking as a business owner out there, what else can I be doing to kind of hedge my bets and diversify out there.
Add other revenue streams.
Yeah, add other revenue streams. Man, the trucking companies, again, this has been the beauty of what I've done now for the past 20 years is I've talked to tens of thousands and thousands of trucking companies. Yeah, I've told you I've been, our podcast and our video link that we go out, we get to visit all these successful companies, and you get to see the things that these successful companies are doing. And again, some of it may not be very sexy, but it's consistent, and they're continuing to grow. And I think that's too many people, I think they want this big rush, and they want something that looks so sexy and beautiful up top. And again, the companies that are successful, they're just doing the same thing over and over and over and growing, and they just see those opportunities,
Got it. So talk to me about some of the features on the load board. Like if you're on the board, obviously there's people who are listing loads for carriers. How do you know like rate per mile? Is that listed? Like how transparent are the load boards? Just give me an idea what that looks like.
Yeah, you're going to open a can of worms now. So our load board, there is an option for rates to get posted. A lot of guys don't post rates. I'm just gonna get the cat out of the bag and say it right now. And I was a shipper at one time. As much as I would like to post rates, there's a couple reasons I didn't. Number one, I wanted to vet the company that was inquired about the load. First, number one, to make sure that they're serious about it, and then they weren't shopping around. Number two, I didn't want a competitor. Because in the bulk world, and especially commodities, you can put two and two together. If you can see where an origin something's coming out of, you can see a rate and all that. You can put all the math together, and especially from a competitor, to go in there and maybe cut that down. So say you had a good rate on there, some competitor might come in, they may buy the same commodity, lower the rate to make their margin. Well, now you're out of that trade. So I went down a quick rabbit hole on that one. But I want to say this just to disclose, like a lot of companies, they don't post the rate because it's not because they don't want the trucker to see it.
It's not about transparency.
They want to build that relationship with them to make sure that there's trust involved before they disclose kind of their cards. Because again, when you're showing someone a rate, and especially if you're posting that specific rate online, I mean, to some of these companies, it's very similar. Like, hey, you're putting your social security number out there, or you're putting your credit card out there for someone to take. So the big thing is they don't want carriers to see that. But a lot of times, once you reach out to that company, they see that you're serious about the load, that you're serious about doing business with them, they'll start disclosing those details. I say all that, we are working on ways to get more transparency on there, to have where you can actually have approved carriers and you can vet those carriers ahead of time, so those carriers will have full disclosure on there. We've also built a TMS system that has more of those internal features on there where you can actually disclose a lot more of that stuff. So it's kind of, we call it more BulkLoads 2.0 that you can use, where it's got more of those enhanced features on there. But yeah, that's the biggest one on there. BulkLoads, again, we're a marketplace, so we're connecting shippers, carriers, brokers all together. One thing that's unique about Bulk, again, we do deal with freight brokers, but there's a lot more direct shippers on our board than I would say most general freight, because a lot of these companies, it's the trader is handling logistics, so he's handling the trucks as well. So that person at Cargill or ADM or whatever truck grain company that would be at, they're very tightly connected with those trucking companies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does make sense. Okay, and then in terms of the way you get paid, is it just a rate per mile, or are there additional, is it additional pay on top of that, like for like the offload or anything like that? Like, how does that work?
Good question for people that don't know. So in Bulk, 99.9% of all rates are paid on the tonnage or weight. So very little, you'll see bulk freight that gets paid a flat rate or a rate per mile or anything like that. It's usually paid per ton or per bushel or per hundredweight or per gallon of that. And again, you got to kind of do the math and start figuring out what that equates to, and again, you got to be very efficient on the weight that you can haul. If you're, I'm just going to say in the Midwest, if your state's licensed for 85.5, you better make sure that your truck and your payload where you're scaling, 26, 27 tons to get that maximum, because if you're not, you're kind of leaving money on the table. But yeah, everything in the bulk world is really paid on the tonnage and stuff like that. And that's where some of these successful companies, they've really mastered being able to have their truck and trailer the lightest as possible so that they can get the max legal payload on there.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's like a formula that you have to kind of figure out, like, what you want to pull, and then you have to obviously put the mileage and the fuel and everything to figure out what that rate's going to be.
Yep.
Do you have any pricing tools on?
We do.
BulkLoads?
Yep. So we have a rate analytics tool that we do. We have a sister company called Smart Freight Funding. That's our factoring arm, and it's again, it's connected right into BulkLoads. So for carriers that haul on BulkLoads, it's optional, but if they want quick pay, they can go to Smart Freight, and we factor. We process thousands of tickets every day from haulers on there. But I'll say that, so we've been able to use a lot of that data, just that raw data, and get some averages on what rates will be. So we can get some pretty good information on kind of where rates are tracking.
Do you find, is there any resistance? Is it easy for people to get paid a fair wage, or because in traditional general freight, there's always complaints about the rates aren't high enough, there's not enough in it, fuel costs are high, insurance is high. Do you hear those same kind of conversations and talk in bulk, or is it more so is it more fair?
No, I think you'll see, there's always this persona, the rates are never good enough. And it's COVID, they were good enough. But it's just always, I think there's just always a stigma that, and again, I agree with that. It's all about, again, you think about this world that we're in the marketplace. You got carriers that are trying to maximize their revenue, and you got shippers that are trying to, get their product moved for as efficient as possible, So it's just always that fine line. And again, when you're dealing with trucking, where you got so many thousands of companies getting into the business, so many people competing, you just get these razor thin margins. And I think that's where it gets so tough for a lot of these carriers.
Got it. How do you sell to shippers? How do you get them on the board? Are you actively selling, or do they just kind of find you? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. I told you earlier, LinkedIn was one of my secret weapons early on, and really just encourage people, if you're trying to find shipping companies, where you can do specific searches, that was one that we really used. But yeah, I think it's word of mouth. I think too, just like we talk, other shippers talk, and one shipper might be like, hey, if you're having trouble finding trucks, go get on BulkLoads and check it out. So that company gets on our platform and starts posting loads. So that's how we really find shippers on there. Again, we may go out and do some email campaigns and research some, but a lot of times, it's never equal supply and demand in trucking. It's either there's too many loads or there's too many trucks. And again, it's always kind of catching that storm of when, as like I said, right now, I'm sure there are shippers out there needing to move rock, like landscape rock and mulch, that now they're trying to find, hey, they're going to the web. How do I find trucks to do this? And then BulkLoads pops up.
Got it. Now, are they posting every load on BulkLoads, or are there some loads that are already like kind of accounted for, and then they post what they have left on BulkLoads? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends on the shipping company, and it's all the above. Yeah, so different. A lot of companies, and I get this, and I was one of them. You want to give loads to your carriers that have been faithful to you and dedicated carriers. So those you probably won't post those out there public, because if you do, and your carrier that may be a subscriber of BulkLoads sees that, he might be a little upset. He's like, hey, man, I thought these were my loads.
Right. What's going on? I thought it was cool.
Yeah. So it's usually those ones that they're trying to that they're having trouble getting out there. Some of it may be a bid. A lot of times we get companies that are like, hey, I'm going to be moving 200 loads from here to here
throw it on there,
in May through June. I need to just start building some relationships so they get that out there, and that's where. That way they can kind of start vetting companies as they come in to move. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So how many users do you have on a load board now? You mind just?
Yeah. No, I'm proud to say we serve over 7,000 companies now. Wow. And if you think about that, 7,000 companies, so that's shippers, brokers, and carriers, and 80% of those are going to represent the carriers. And if you look at the number of trucks, again, we deal with a lot of small owner operators, but if you do the calculations, we're representing now close to 50 or 60,000 actual units, actual physical trucks.
Wow. And kind of being able to aggregate all that data from the industry, what have been like some of the things you've learned or some findings, and just because you have a bird's eye view of this entire industry. So what are some things that are like glaring that stand out to you that's like, oh, this is interesting, like just, some things like that? Yeah,
what's interesting about bulk, and especially if you get in the grain world, and if you think about commodities in general, here's just kind of a rule of thumb a lot of people need to think about, because some people are like, well, why can't I move corn from, let's just say Missouri out to California? It's like, well, you can do that, but typically it's going to go cheaper by rail. If you look at commodities in general, especially specifically ag commodities, a lot of your big transportation sectors love commodities. So vessels love to move commodities. Barges love to move commodities. Railroads love to move commodities. They love to move commodities more than they love to move finished goods, because they can move larger quantities and move it quicker that way. So, just perfect example, a railroad would much rather move grain than they would cars, because they can just they can move larger amounts of grain. They can move it faster down the road. So with that said, grain and commodities, it's super competitive on long distance, not so much local. So what that does is, if you look at trucking, most of our users, they're moving grain, let's just say on average of 150 to 200 miles versus a general freight carrier that's moving something on average 300 or 400 or 500 miles. So your pockets are so much smaller. You got a lot of our carriers that are running, let's just say you got a carrier in Kansas, he's running smaller pockets. He may run Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, but he doesn't get much further than that. So that's not all of them, but that's just it's a neat statistics. Like you got these little tiny pockets of carriers and how they run versus the general freight. I think that's just something unique about bulk.
No, I love that. What are some of the challenges of the industry?
So one thing about bulk and ag, which is different than any other sector, we have such an influx at times of capacity, and specifically farmers. So if you think about this, all these farmers and farming, yes, it's really the number of farms. Well, the number of farms keeps getting smaller because corporate farming keeps getting bigger. So these farmers, these farms keep getting
consolidating.
Merged. Yep, keeps consolidating. Well, so now you got these farmers that are basically running small grain companies. And I say that so these farmers now have huge grain bins, but some of these farmers have fleets of 30, 40, 50 trucks that they're moving. Those farmers now that are moving that truck, let's just say those trucks right now are just moving on the farm. Well, then he says, hey, I can move when I'm not farming and when I'm not using these trucks on the farm, I can use the same equipment and haul somebody else's grain. I can haul commercially. What that does, though, is that now injects that many more trucks into the market. in certain times of the year. So now you get all these farmers moving grain. Well, you got your regular commercial haulers. Well, what's that do to rates? Got more competition, rates go down. That's just something that we see that it's. I don't know how you prevent that, and it's just one thing that you get this injection at certain times where the rates just go down the tube because you get this injection. The other thing too, a lot of these farmers, they'll run these trucks, not all of them, but sometimes some of these farmers, they'll run them at a break-even cost. Mm-hmm. They don't even care to make money. They're just doing it to keep their guys busy, these farm hands that they have working on the farm. And that can be a challenge to your everyday commercial hauler that's out there trying to make a buck.
Yeah, I was listening to something talking about farmers, and they were saying how basically the ownership of farm, anytime a farm goes up for sale, the neighboring farm usually is going to buy it. So there's no opportunity for anybody else to get into farming because it's such a tight niche community that it doesn't stay out of the farming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not buying into farming. If you're not in farming already, just forget about it.
Yeah, you're 100% true. Well, and the price of farm ground now is
right.
just, some of these numbers, and again, I know real estate's expensive up here, but farm ground that was 20 years ago going for, $2,000 or $3,000 an acre is now $15,000 to $20,000 an acre. And who can a 500 acre farm? I can't even do my math, but what bank's going to give somebody the money to, millions of dollars to buy farm ground? So it's very tough. It's earlier, super high barrier of entry.
Yeah,
crazy.
Sure. How has everything going on around immigration and everything impacted the industry? Do you have any information or anything that you could kind of add?
I don't.
'Cause I know
really.
There's a lot of farm hands. That,
we do. So there are certain, especially during harvest time, that they'll have visa workers and stuff like that. But I guess I don't see it as much.
Okay, you don't see that side of it.
I don't see that side with what we're doing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. So talk to me about the expansion of the business. So you've grown to 7,000 users now, and then you decided to add on the factoring piece, right? Well, not then. Now you have that, but as you built BulkLoads, you added on the factoring. So talk about Smart Freight funding and how that kind of came into play.
Yeah. So BulkLoads, again, 2011 we started that, and it was interesting when I worked at Bartlett Grain as a shipper. I had to approve all these freight bills, and a lot of times I'd get these, not a lot of times, some of these freight bills I'd get, it would be from, it'd be from a factoring company, that the carrier was signed up with. And I'd be looking at this and I'd be like, why are these guys factoring these loads? It'd be an NOA is what I was wanting to say. It'd be an NOA that they signed over the receivable to pay to this factoring company. Well, Bartlett I work for, we were paying next day. If a trucker walked in with an invoice, we could literally take them to our accounts payable, and she would write a check. And I started looking at that time, and this was again 2000, early 2000s. Some of these factoring companies, they were charging 8, 9, 10% of these invoices. Wow. And I even called the trucker. I was like, buddy, dude, I can get you paid without paying this 10%. That's your margin. He's like, I know, but I signed this, and I have to send all my receivables to them. And I'm just like, so I say all that. It's like, dude, I hated factoring companies. I know hate's a strong word. I extremely dislike, because dude, I wanted these guys to survive. I want to make money. So I fast forward. We start BulkLoads. Well, on BulkLoads, a lot of these truckers, after they got set up there, man, Jared, we're finding these loads, we're hauling for these companies, but some of these companies, they're net 30 plus days. I got to get paid quicker. Who would you recommend to factor? So at that time, and there was a couple of factoring companies that I probably, I wouldn't say I didn't hate, maybe I disliked them, but not as bad. But I started referring to a couple of these other factoring companies. So fast forward, we kept talking, and I'm like, why are we sending these guys to these other factoring companies? Why don't we try to do this ourselves?
Right.
I was still running BulkLoads, but I said, if we could find somebody else that could help us start that business unit. So that's how Smart Freight, we started that in 2014. There's another partner, Rachel Biesterfeld is her name, but she comes from, actually we worked together at Bartlett Grain.
Okay.
So that's how I knew her, but she's a payroll, accountant type person. So she was the one that came on, and we started Smart Freight Funding. And but yeah, we just even if you look at our advertising today on Smart Freighting, the top says we hate factoring companies. That's why we became one. And it's true. But the cool thing is, I said about that driver that when I was at Bartlett, one thing that we do at Smart Freight, And I'm sure other factoring companies have probably caught on today, but like, number one, we don't make these guys sign contracts. They don't have to send all the receivables to us. If they have just a couple slow payers that they want, we'll do that. If they want to send everything we can, we'll welcome all. And some people, they look at us like, that's bad business. I'm like, well, dude, I'm not handcuffing these guys. So number one, they don't have a contract. And number two, which means they can leave anytime they want. And then number two, they can, like I said, they can direct bill companies if they want, or they can send them to us. The only thing we ask is like, hey, don't direct bill some to the same company and then want us to pay. It gets confusing on who's paying who. But that's how we started it. Man, we serve, I would say, I think 3,000 to 4,000 companies on the factoring side. So yeah, that was 2014. That was the factoring side. It's been a great business to serve those guys on that side of the business. In 2019, we realized that some of these people on our marketplace, this was kind of cool. A lot of these companies that we started growing on BulkLoads over the years, they had a couple trucks. Well, some of these companies, they were getting up to 10, 15, 20 trucks as they were growing with us. And they started asking us like, hey, what do you recommend for dispatch tools? And what do you recommend for this? Well, we started looking at other companies and we're like, well, man, why don't we create our own solution? So that's what started Bulk TMS. It's a TMS specifically for bulk haulers, and it has everything from dispatch, invoicing, tracking. I mean, everything a TMS covers. Again, it's bolted onto BulkLoads. It's bolted into Smart Freight, so it can be a turnkey process from a guy finding loads, dispatching a truck, getting paid, all within the platform. So that was another tool that we launched in 2019. In 2022, so we started our insurance piece, and again, I always say this. Not everybody needs bulk loads. There are companies out there that can find loads without using bulk loads. You were talking about they may have connections. Not everybody needs quick pay. There are companies that they have a decent enough cash balance or reserve or relationship with their bank. They don't need cash flow. Some people may have a different TMS, but 100% of every trucking company on the road has to have insurance. And even us personally. So I just said, hey, why don't we look at that industry and figure out, can we do it better than others out there? So I shouldn't say we didn't get into it just because we saw the opportunity. We got into it because you and I both know there's not one person that has a good experience with insurance. Most times it's painful. They got misquoted. I mean, there's just that. So we said, hey, why don't we get involved and see if we can do this better and serve our clients that already know us on these other capacities on the insurance. So that was in 2022 we started that. And then last year, I mentioned this, last but not least, what was interesting, we started a compliance division as well and permitting. I don't know why we didn't start that sooner. And the only reason I say this is over the last 10, 12 years, we've had thousands of companies that they get on BulkLoads and they're like, hey, Jared, I'm just trying to figure out if there's opportunities out there. I'm a company driver, or I'm getting my CDL, or I'm just getting my truck. Well, we would always be like, well, that's great. Come to us when you're ready for business or when you're ready. Well, then we're like, why aren't we meeting those people where they're at? Right. If they're in the process of getting a truck or trying to get their DOT, it's like, hey, we can help you with that. So that's where we started. So now we can actually help those guys. Hey, if you need to get your DOT, we can help walk you through that process. We can get you through, basically your IFTAs, everything that's on the back end compliance. So that's what we released last year.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
So I guess
it's
there's
been fun.
some more stuff coming in another year or so, because every 2 years or so, it seems like you're adding on another piece.
It's actually every 3 years. Every 3 years we have. And we have some other things in the pipe this year. We're excited. We have a fuel card that we've used, but we've never really pushed it hard, and we're really looking at pushing out a fuel program. So it's another one that we probably should have done it years ago and put more focus on it, but it's one thing that's in our deck of cards, and then we have a couple other ones lined up too. So yeah.
I'm sure you got a big vision, big plan. I meant to ask you when you were talking about the factoring side, what are the typical payment terms for like a lot of these O's? Are they like net net 30, or how long does it usually take for these?
Yeah, if you look at our book of business, on average, it's about net 25 to 30 days on returns.
Okay.
So yeah, in the factoring space, it's gotten very competitive over the years. There are now brokerages that offer their own quick pay. Some even shipping companies offer their own quick pay. So again, it's it's easier and to get your money now, so we have to be even more aggressive on that. But for us, we do everything's next day. We do same day pay, usually around 2%. There's no reserves. We don't hold any reserves. We have, again, I told you, no contracts. So we try to make it very, very frictionless.
Yeah. Got it. What do you enjoy most about the business that you built, man? Because you serve all these carriers, you serve these shippers, like you said, you serve brokers.
Yeah.
What excites you the most about business now?
Yeah, what fills my tank, dude. And, love for your users to check out our YouTube page, BulkLoads. Over the last couple of years, we really took a different initiative. I've hosted a podcast now since 2018. We release one every week. But we really said, hey, how do we get out there and bring better, more quality content? So last couple of years, I've been on the road. I think you've seen me on there, but
sure.
traveled the country. And I love visiting people. And there's some people that cringe over that. But I still get nervous just going in an office. But dude, I love sitting down and just talking to people about their business, walking through their operation. Again, I'm a farm kid, so especially when you get into the farming communities and you get to see this guy that they farm so many acres, plus they have a trucking outfit, plus they have some kind of feed mill. Those are the things walking through there. But even walking with those people, videoing it, and putting together a story that we can share to the rest of the world. I love sharing our story about agriculture and how valuable it is. And really, most of us forgetting, a lot of your listeners, most of us, there's not that many generations back that's agricultural tied. Most people, they can look back, whether it was their parents or grandparents, there was something that they did that was involved in agriculture. So the roots don't go back that far to people that you can tie them to agriculture. But that's what fills me up, is just really doing that. Second, doing this, man. I love sharing the story, and I love sharing the vision of what we're doing out there. I love encouraging people. I think for me, at the end of the day, man, if we can help the small guys and lift somebody up, again, I think a lot of people, they're chasing, and there's nothing wrong with the big companies and all that, but man, dude, I love the small guys. I love seeing those companies. And again, finding someone that maybe was at failure or almost on the verge of bankruptcy, not making their truck payments, and getting them on a path of sustainability and doing that. It was so we're celebrating almost 14 years, almost 15 years, and I've had the opportunity now. I try to every day write a thank you letter to someone, whether it's someone I met or maybe a customer or a member or something like that. But there was this one guy, I remember I sent him this thank you letter, and I sent him a nice little gift in the mail. And it was like a month later, he calls me up and he was like, "Hey, Jared, I got your gift. Thank you so much." I was like, well, and I said, "No, dude." I go, "Thank you, dude." I go, "You've been with us for 10 years. You've been paying a membership, $500 every year for 10 years, man. Thank you for believing in us, man. I just appreciate that." And he goes, "You don't understand." He goes, "You've helped me." I was like, "No, I know, but I'm just thanking you." He goes, "You've actually helped me grow my business I never thought was possible." He goes, "I'm thanking you." And it was hard for me to take that back. And again, I know what he was saying, but it was just he was really genuine. He was like, "Dude," he goes, "I know you're thanking me," but he goes, "Dude, I'm thanking you for help. I'm thanking you for helping me with my business." Yeah. And that's, I remember that. And I was like, man, this is making a difference. We do things we're doing this to support our families and afford us good lifestyles and do fun stuff. But that's the meat, man. That's, if you got to go back, we have this sign at our office, and it's, if you go down the hallway right before my office, I got it strung up there, and I look at it almost every time, but it says, "Never forget where you came from." And I just pray. That's my prayer every day. It's I don't forget those humbling beginnings, the sawmill experiences, the people that I met, and then the people that we get to serve. Yeah.
Tell me a quick story about, because you've been going out recently and just kind of connecting with your users, and just tell me a story that really touched you, kind of on one of those visits, and just when you got there, what'd you see?
Oh man, we've been doing a lot of visits. So
give me one. Just give me one that really stands out. And you don't got to say their names, but just.
Man, I'm gonna have to think deep on that one, because there's too many. There's too many good ones to share. I think, again, most of these stories, we all know that trucking's hard. we all know that business is hard. We know that families are hard. But man, when you hear these stories of these people that that started from nothing and now are running 80-something trucks and third generation's taking over the business, and again, companies making $50 to $100 million a year, but just watching how that happened, man, it's cool to see that the American dream is still alive, and anybody can go out and get it. Every citizen in this country has the opportunity for that dream, and I think that's my encouragement for people listening to this. That, man, don't be afraid to go out there and go after it.
Yeah, go haul some bulk, man. That's where it's at. We always say on this show that the riches are in the niches. So I love to
I've stolen that one from you too.
Yeah, I love to explore different niches, because when you become a large fish in a smaller pond, there's a lot more opportunity there, man, as opposed to, doing what everybody else is doing. So I love these type of shows because it opens up people's minds and their eyes to different opportunities that they may have not been thinking of,
I think the last thing, if I can say to users, again, I'd be lying if I said I wanted to create a life for my family to afford us, to do fun stuff and take trips. You met my family. They actually came along. Yep. They're somewhere in downtown Philadelphia right now.
Yes, sir.
But I'll say this, try to be very focused on solving someone's problems. And I think, if you can solve someone's problems, and many people have heard that, but it's true. If you can kind of keep figuring out, I love when I see businesses out there and it's finding those little things of what they're doing that's different than everybody else. On our drive up here, we stopped at this little cafe, and this may mean nothing to anybody out there, but we ordered our lunch, and it was at this cafe and bakery. So they brought us our lunch, and then on our table, or on each one of our trays, they had 3 little donuts that they give you with everyone. I was like, that's really cool. Why did they? It was just that little touch that you just remember. That you
details.
Those little details that you remember. But I love looking at businesses and some of these businesses where I'm just like, man, if they could be doing this better, if they could be doing better customer service, if they could, if it streamlined this process, man, they could be doing it a lot better. So I think that's what kind of excites me.
No, I love it, man. Well, I have a ton of respect for what you built, man. When I came across just your ecosystem, I was just so impressed. I was like, man, this guy gets it. And what I love about you is you really put people at the core of everything you do. It's not about building some huge empire. It's really about, how do I serve people the best way? And every time you add a different solution, it's just continuing to serve. And it shows, because you have people who love what you've built. And like you said, the man thanked you. He's a paying customer, and he's thanking you for paying you, right? So there's nothing better than that,
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So as we wrap, let's number one, let's let everybody know where they can connect with you personally, and also learn more about BulkLoads and all the other businesses. And then we'll give a final thought. So you kind of just gave one, but I want you to give one more, which is just something like spiritual or entrepreneurial, just a little encouragement to all our listeners, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. No, thank you and this has just been a great show. Man, appreciate you giving me the mic and really speak to your platform, because again, these are your babies, and you're allowing me to speak on here. So, but to find me, I said it earlier, LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Probably more than any other social media app out there. I think it's a professional site where you can reach a lot of people. Look me up, Jared Flinn on LinkedIn. I will connect with you if you want to reach out and have questions about the industry. Happy to connect and talk to you about that. So number one, YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel, watch our videos. There you can really see a lot of who we are, what our culture is, what our company is, what our passion is. So just go to BulkLoads on YouTube. And again, if you are interested, or maybe if you're out there, we didn't get mentioned, but is Dana Gardner?
Yeah,
he was on
Dana,
your podcast.
Yeah,
he was on your podcast. But we serve a lot of people, and but yeah, if you're out there doing dry bulk. Whether it's over the road, hopper bottoms, in dumps, even dump truck stuff, we do some of that stuff. Liquid tanker, man, get a hold of us on BulkLoads. We can show you the load board, give you a free demo. So yeah, want to serve in that capacity. A couple of things, we were talking about this earlier. So we host a conference. It'll be in April. You can go to our website, but it's bulkfreightconference.com, or go to BulkLoads. You'll see it. It's down in Branson. We welcome people to come there. I'm going to come to Freight Fest. I know you got that coming up this year.
Yes, sir.
But I tell people this too. You said the niches and your riches. Here's what I keep saying over that: your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. Dude, go out and visit people. There's a reason why I'm here on this podcast today and why I go and visit. People remember that stuff. So, man, if you can, look up the Bulk Freight Conference, look up Freight Fest, come to that as well. You will not be disappointed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, no, and I'll just say, overall, I'm glad you gave me the mic on the spiritual thing. For me, strong believer in Lord Jesus Christ, and it was actually this morning. I was riding the train up here, and I've been reading through the Bible. I read through the Bible last year. I'm reading through it again, and but there was this thought that my prayer out there for people listening to this is like, man, hopefully, with what I'm doing out there, I'm pointing people to Him overall. A guy told me a while back. He goes, Jared. You're a lighthouse. And I said, what do you mean a lighthouse? He goes, you know how like those ships, there are all these ships out there and, they're in these choppy waters, losing direction. He goes, they're looking for a light. And he goes, remember, you're that lighthouse for these guys. So he goes, I'm not the light, but I can be a lighthouse that points them to the light. And I don't take that for granted as well. I think that God's given me a great platform to preach. And again, I'm a sinner like the rest of us. I make mistakes, but hopefully, I'm showing through my work. I'm gonna get emotional saying I hope through my work that I'm glorifying Him and showing people His grace and mercy.
I love that, man. I love that. That's so dope. Yeah, and shout to Dana, man. Dana was on the podcast. He said, I use BulkLoads. I said, yeah, that's my guy.
You didn't say it's Southern enough.
Boatload. I don't know how Data said it, man. He's like boatload. Something. Shout to Data, man. But he's another user, and man, we have tons of Hustle fam who use your stuff. So it's just great to be able to meet you. Well, this is the second time we're meeting in person. This is the first time we're meeting in person.
First time in person.
First time in person. The reason why I thought about it was because I saw you were set up in at a conference that we were at one time, and I was like, "There's Jared." Like you had like your podcast booth, but I didn't see you. But then obviously we connected online, virtual, and all that stuff. So I feel like I met you before, but I didn't see you that time. But finally got to do this, and this has been great,
awesome.
Man. I really appreciate you spending the time flying out. Man, Hustle fam, you know what we do around this time. If you smell something burning, it's only your desire. Myself, Mr. Jared Flinn, BulkLoads, Smart Freight Funding. What's the compliance company?
Bulk permitting.
Permitting. What's the other one?
Bulk Insurance Group.
Bulk Insurance.
Go to BulkLoads.com. You'll find it all.
Bulk is all here, man. This guy is a great guy, man. Really, really good man. So definitely support what he's doing. And till next time, man, we're out. All right, y'all. Listen, I'm happy to announce that we finally launched our YouTube memberships. Listen, if you want to support Truck and Hustle for all the hard work that we've been doing over the past 5 years, this is where you need to be. As a part of our memberships, number one, you'll get exclusive access to all of our archive content. Number two, we'll be doing at least one live webinar with one of the guests or somebody else from our network that you love to continue to add value to you and your business. Third, we'll be having exclusive behind the scenes content that we shoot and doesn't, make the final cut. So make sure you go check it out. Get that subscription right now and join us, man. TNH forever. Let's go. All right, guys, if you love Truck and Hustle and you love the interviews and the information that we're providing week to week, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All right, Hustle fam.